because there's wind and tidal interchanges. So therefore, the longfin smelt population in Humboldt Bay should be considered in conjunction with the Eel River estuary population, and I would bet you $1 right here that they're rebounding. And you know how much data they have to constrain us from not using the cutterhead dredge for potentially taking 1/2 of a longfin smelt while dredging Woodley Island Marina? No data. No data from Humboldt Bay. That was based on San Francisco Bay data models. So they run a model, come up with 1/2 a fish that we might suck up, and they just say, well, maybe there's only one left, so we need that 1/2. No, it's just like, it used to be that in order to promulgate regulations, and this is the California Endangered Species Act, and I was once a proponent of it, and now I'm seeing that their actions are not benefiting Delta smelt, and they're not protecting Delta smelt in other venues. And so, and in fact, they're constraining us from restoring our ecosystem. So, in fewer words, but I think I've hit all the points that are here. And this is essentially, at the bottom it says, current regulatory gridlock is keeping the community of Humboldt Bay from coping with climate change and from further restoring ecosystem function, such as salt marsh restoration. We need to come together in agreement over management issues and get accord from agencies so we can thrive economically and foster ecological recovery. Can I get a 1/2 a clap for that?
I'll give you another 1/2 of the longfin smelt.
What's the sound of one longfin smelt clapping? But you know, I've been on the Harbor District since 2008. I've witnessed this now for 5 years. I have tried to raise this issue kind of like I did on the MLPA, you know, just kind of get it off my chest, see if I could like organize by rabble-rousing to some degree. Hasn't worked. What's going on here? These meetings that promulgate regulations based on the state laws are behind closed doors. They are private meetings between public agents, and you can't go there. And when they come out with a decision, which is based on logic that is from their circle, and I believe as an outside scientist, I can impeach a lot of their assumptions, I don't get to go. And as a matter of fact, everybody said, that's the exact opposite of what we need, Pat. It's you in the middle of these meetings. No, it's what we need. It's a transparent government. It's got to be based on science. If they're doing policy that's not based on science, and it's injurious to the community and we can't function, it's oppressive. So we need the Baykeeper. We need EPIC. We need every environmental organization to come together with the other interests in the Bay and to have a document where all the leaders sign on to it. And just like the MLPA, it says, look, this is what we need as a region. This is what we agree to. And that includes the care of the Bay. And guess what? We're going to care for it a lot better from right here than bureaucrats out of some high-rise somewhere. And it's going to be a lot less constraining. But we need, so now, I just said a bunch of things about people that work for, you know, implicitly for the agencies. And I think the other thing that we need to do is make sure that we don't get into a blame game, that we don't get too hostile against the people that are kind of in the system. It's not a system of their devise, they're just playing parts in it, but we need reform of the system. It gives me great pleasure to get a hand from this crowd. Thank you.
I'm going to go with Dennis quick and then Rex.
So again, same comment to Larry. Good to hear the turnaround of approach. Our efforts have been stifled here for a long time. Prior to you coming to Jesus moment, and I'm glad you have. The Ron LaValle science that runs most of the stuff that is destructive to all of us, whether it's our economic, our recreation, common sense, is rampant. And you're right, we can't throw stones and have pitchfork fights, but the NGOs that have been here promoting this stuff, that we've got to find a way to get them to Without those NGOs going to these agencies, somewhat positive, the climb is really, really, really hard, even if we can just get them neutral on the issue. So appreciate the new favorable approach to looking at these things.
Yeah, and I think you need to distinguish between, is this on? 1, 2, 3? Blue light. 1, 2, 3. I don't need it. You need to distinguish between local groups where they face you in the supermarket and groups that are lobbying us from out of town. And I'm going to single out Audubon, Sacramento, because in the case against Coast Oyster, they lied, they used fear, they blew a lot of my friends off me.
You're right, but baykeepers lie.
And then it's just like, so they're saving Humboldt Bay, but they're not really saving Humboldt Bay. And so I think there's a problem with that. But Dennis, to like throw all the scientific data out the window with one person who was malfeasant is really an error. Science needs to guide us. A huge amount of science is collected. In the Bay, Coast Seafood doesn't get the credit it should get for collecting the science that actually justifies their management. And in fact, that science is discounted when we try to get them permits. And so we need to work through those issues too. But if we come together, we've done this over offshore oil. We've done this over other issues, liquid natural gas. I mean, it's just like, once a community comes together, then we have power. We did it on the MLPA. So, Rex, sorry.
Yeah, and I just, because I happen to be somewhat involved with and I'm glad to hear that they're going to be able to get the ramp at Fields Landing. I'm not worried about helping my district, I'm worried about helping the fishermen, just to make that clear. But I'm more worried, since the rules haven't changed in 5.5 years, and you negotiated that great $2 million deal with PG&E, I'm more worried about the residents of King Salmon that call me on a regular basis saying, when is the channel going to be dredged? Because that was the agreement for the $2 million. And the eelgrass rules, the sediment disposal, or beautiful stuff from the bottom of the bay that we can use for everything, whatever we call it, haven't changed since you got that the harbor got that $2 million. So is there any plan? We just heard just 350 to 500,000 yards to be taken out of Humboldt Bay, and we're going to get 22,000 of it for $675,000. I'm just wondering, what do I tell the people of King Salmon? Are we ever going to fulfill the promises that were made, or it just the bureaucracy has stopped it?
Well, Rex, I just tried to convey to you that we've been powerless. And that's the way the government works right now. We're a small agency. We're endowed with $800 grand a year from the county. When they basically constrain us, we don't have the lawyers of a private corporation or a larger government agency, or the wherewithal of the city of Eureka to just raise the taxes and get it from somewhere else. Our resource base is limited, and without the permits from the environmental agencies, we're helpless. And I mean, do I look like a helpless kind of guy? No, you can't believe it, can you? But we are. And so we need to go back and seek redress, and maybe we need to do so through assembly people and senators, Rex, and get the department to understand that this isn't cutting it. It's not legal. This is road regulation. When they say the longfin smelt is in Humboldt Bay and it may be endangered because it's going away elsewhere, so therefore you can't use the same piece of equipment that's been used for the last 30 years in the Bay. They've just departed from the law and exercised a judgment that imposes huge tariffs on the Harbor District and the public. And I'm going to give this over to, because I'm getting a little too wound up, so I'll turn it over to somebody who's cool as a cucumber, and that's Todd Reinecke here. And Todd has lost hundreds of thousands of dollars after having faith in us to come to put his boat fabrication, but really more it's boat repair business here in Humboldt Bay. He's had to lay people off. He has missed his cherry customers because the biggest boats from Alaska to Baja can't get in here. And so these costs are real. They're not just the folks in King Salmon, Rex. And I mean, I don't know if I thought it would help if we would set up a picket at Fish and Wildlife tomorrow, maybe I'd do it. But I mean, I'm looking for you to help me with the answer because we're all in this together, and I'm looking for you too, David. Fishermen should be joining in this, not attacking the Harbor District. We're the victim.
Wow, tough act to follow. I am.
Well, turn it out, Todd.
Yeah. Can't match
How's this
that.
target?
For once, you got me. My name is Todd Ranke. I am the proprietor at Phillips Landing Boatyard. I am the only tenant, and Pat's right, I did move my business here, and I am as passionate as Pat, and I am a very unfiltered, intense individual. So with that said, I don't hold public offices, and I don't usually do this kind of stuff. But because we are passionate about what we do, I have been in this business 30 years, and I am the little guy here. I'm here representing you and you know, the fishermen and the people that we make a living here. And I'm not going to get into the sob story of taking a profitable business and relocating it here and blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is each and every one of us in this room, we've all got the rights to say what we want and believe what we want, but at the end of the day, if we don't get it together, all of us together for a common goal, and that is save our harbor, we're not going to have a harbor. And the individual that said something about a kayak, that's what's going to be in the harbor. And what do you do with these? I have customers that are fourth generation fishermen. This is all they know. I've been in this business 30 years. It's all I know. It's all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. For another reason, I'm too old. They won't hire me at McDonald's. You know, and we're here to pass on this incredible legacy. And I mean, I've only been a part of it for 2.5, 3 years. But you look around this room, I mean, there is generations after generations and generations that has been able to feed their families and support an economy and to be able to have people like this represent us. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I don't agree with everything that goes on in the Harbor District, and people know that, but at the end of the day, we're all for the common good, and that's the 6 feet of water that's in our harbor right now, that we need to have a lot more than that. And you know, anything we can do to lock this in and get secure, our security, is worth the fight that it takes. And Pat's super passionate, I'm super passionate. And if we lose one more dock, we see the dilapidated docks, Redwood Terminal 1, 2, I mean on down, King Salmon is prime example. We lose one dock out of there, it will be next to impossible to replace that one dock. We have to take everything that's here now that we have left, which is nothing, and we have to fix it, we have to repair it. We need to get involved in saving what's left, because Coastal Commission is not going to let us come back in and put a new pier in or another marina or any more fishing docks. I mean, we're fighting for if we don't win this fight now and get together and get some kind of a group effort going, the big guys down south are going to kick our butts. And they're already doing it. They're doing it on a daily basis. The little guys like me, we're going to be gone. We're going to be gone. Yes, sir. You stopped my rant. That was great. So that's good.
I wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to, I serve on the Water District Board.
Yes, sir.
And there was a pipeline running through the peninsula, basically, that was installed in 1965, and we replaced it 3.5 years ago. Because of the Coastal Commission, it cost an additional $1 million to install that pipeline, because we couldn't locate it in the same right-of-way because of endangered grass that basically grew after we put it in the first time.
Yeah.
So, you know, all I'm saying is, we as an agency would be very interested in getting together with other agencies to support some type of regulatory relief for the North Coast area. I mean, I can give you more examples. I mean, we've been told that we have to return the Mad River to natural flows. And the Mad River dried up when it had natural flows.
Right.
Okay? It doesn't now. So the regulatory world is in a different world. It's
Yes.
not in reality. And we need to, I just want to express support for working together with other agencies of any nature that deal with regulatory relief for the North Coast, particularly for the Coastal Commission and some of these other agencies there, where the original purpose was worthwhile, but the regulatory, the people working in there have gotten isolated and they're not in touch with reality, frankly.
And they're overworked and they have
I applaud this man. Everybody should. It's the start. It's what we need. There's a fellow worker.
My name's Dave Bitts. I'm a crab and salmon fisherman. I've had my boat at Woodland Island since I bought it in 1985. What have I done wrong here? Oh, I have to push this? Oh, I missed that. Oh, I see. Okay. Is this better?
No. Try it again. Just shut it off.
You need to turn yours off.
Yeah, try that, Dave, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Oops.
maybe I can reach, yeah, okay. So I've had my boat at Woodley Island for 30 years, plus 30 going on 35. And I want to say, I'm really glad that Pat Higgins is on the Harbor Commission doing the job he's doing. He's a great benefit to the community. He's a real pain in the ass sometimes, but on balance, he's a great benefit to the community. I don't know Larry that well, but from the little I've seen of him, I have the impression that he's a guy who understands how bureaucracy works and can figure out how to weave a path through it when that's necessary. And Larry, I hope you won't let me down on that one, because the dredging that is proposed is a start. It's an essential start, but that's all it is. If it doesn't happen, we may not have a crab port this winter. A bunch of us had to move our boats to the deep end of the Woodley Island pool, down towards A dock. All the crab boats, pretty much, have been at A, B, and C docks the last few years, because that's the only docks we can get in and out of when we need to go. And I would say, as operators of a marina, your most basic charge is to make sure that boats can come and go from that marina when they want to. I know of 2 boats that have run aground, getting out of A dock, the deep end of the pool. They're bigger boats, deeper boats, but they have, at the very least, scrape bottom getting out of it. That should not happen. And if we can't do the partial dredging, is going to be a big help. Without it, we're very close to the point where we just can't come and go to fish crabs. There's about 80 boats that fish crabs out of Eureka, typically, local boats. We average somewhere around 3 million pounds of crabs a year, which is somewhere around $10 million ex-vessel, which is nothing in the scale of Humboldt County's economy, but it's a heck of a lot. It's most of our livelihood for those 80 of us that operate boats, and it's winter income for our crews at the very least. Not to mention that it's the main reason that we have Wild Planet and Kiowa Fish Company receiving fish at their docks, is because they're here to buy crabs. They do other business, but they're here to buy crabs. So I hope we can continue along this path. And Pat, you gave me hope that maybe there's a chance that common sense can prevail. Greatest misnomer of all time, common sense. And we can go back to the most environmentally benign and cheapest means of getting the work done. Would go one step further. The mud that fills up Humboldt Bay comes from many sources, but one of those sources is logging in the Elk River and Jacoby Creek and other watersheds. The companies are permitted to do what they do and discharge that mud down slow. And so the mud is legal when it enters Humboldt Bay, but then it's stuck there and it's illegal to get it out of there. And that's wrong. But I think also it would be fair if the timber operators paid some share of the cost of dredging based on their contribution to the mud in Humboldt Bay. And as a fisherman, I need to say, perhaps I should have said first, it's very much in my interest to see timberland stay in timber production and agricultural land stay in agricultural production for as long as we can possibly manage it. That works out much better for me as a fisherman than if those lands go to other uses. So I'm not against timber harvest. I'm not against timber companies. I respect their right to try to make a profit. But I think and I suspect, we think the Harbor District has the authority to go outside its immediate turf and upslope, and might have the authority to impose a fee I suspect that if that were done, we would see less sediment coming off of timber slopes than we currently do. And that would be good for everybody, including the timber companies. Just a thought.
David, or Gary?
His logic is impeccable. And in 2003, I had this conversation with Ron Fritchie and David Hall. Since being on the Harbor District since 2007, and then having an executive director from Astoria come down, I started to understand the Harbor District views the whole transactional thing as a wood basket. So we can't take our largest industrial client and go bait them. We don't have the lawyers, we don't have the standing. This is the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board's hot potato. If they're not doing their job, you have to go back. I know that you're not getting what you need when you go back, but that's not my fault.
Gary?
I only have one question. Can eelgrass be transplanted?
Eelgrass in Humboldt Bay can't be transplanted because it only grows where it grows, so if you transplanted it somewhere else, it wouldn't grow there. Does that make any sense? I mean, it grows in every square inch of appropriate tidal current, depth, sunlight, and water velocity in the bay. At carrying
from
capacity.
somewhere else.
Well, some of the mitigation that's put on the Harbor District is transplanting, but it's got a high failure rate. So that's,
Yeah.
you know,
Short answer is no.
the water has to be at the right depth, and so that's why.
Well, Humboldt
it
State could
chooses
do it in the
this
lab, you know, but you can't do it in real life out in the bay.
Right, and that's where they got some of the science from.
Bill?
Good.
Oh, there, sorry.
Hello? Okay. Hi, I'm Becky Reese. I'm chair of the Eureka Chamber. And what I'm sensing here is a strong sense of urgency that something needs to be done. What I'm hoping out of this meeting is that some kind of a game plan will be orchestrated and you will let the community know what we need to do to help our bay thrive. So I'm hoping that some kind of a plan will be developed.
I can't get it back on. That is exactly what I intend, and I'm looking for allies here today, and we'll continue to do so. So, pressure's off. We're getting 20,000 cubic yards out of the harbor. No, it isn't. We're taking that sediment out to the hoods. The next time that'll cost twice as much. We need to get the permits that we need, and next July, we need to be able to swing into action with the cutter head and begin a routine of maintenance dredging with deposition on the peninsula, and then beyond that to deposition in the surf zone. And so I'm open to any partnership. I'm really intrigued. I'm very, very happy to hear from the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. On the issues of the Bay, I think our natural allies are the city of Arcata, the city of Eureka, the county of Humboldt, and there are the environmental groups, there's the fishing organizations, and then there's people, and so I'm willing to come to the chamber and to participate in forums on Humboldt Access. You can look at my piece on conversations on Keat from August 5th, and so I must sound like a minor bird. I mean, I'm not going to vary very much from, and that's our message. And then we all understand it. There's Ray Raphael's myths of the American Revolution. He dispelled the myth that 6 white guys started the American Revolution. Everybody read Thomas Paine. Everybody.
40.
Understood at a bedrock level what the choice was. And that was hang together, hang separately. Still the same today.
2 more questions. Bill, Uri, and then comment, and then we'll wrap it up.
I was interested to hear, David, this is a reference to the logging up Elk River and I guess even freshwater, I imagine. Years ago, I came across a water code section in the 13,000 range, I think it's 13,232, that says people who put, or companies, entities that dump sediment into stream channels can be fined up to $20 per gallon. And just so you'll know, I mean, I think Maxim did quite a bit of that. I don't know that Humboldt Redwood does that. Most of the stuff that's flowing in the bay, I think, was generated originally by Maxim Pacific Lumber Company. In fact, the Water Quality Board over the years has found that over 540,000 cubic yards of materials was put into the stream channels of the Elk River. And there's been no enforcement mechanism to cause Maxim, Charles Hurwitz, or any of his subsidiaries to pay the cost of removing that. It may be appropriate, I would think, for the Harbor District to pursue that with the water board, with our Regional Water Quality Board, and even get the local district attorney to go after that. That would probably help pay for the cost of dredging. Just the numbers, but the math here is something like this. For every cubic yard of sediment, there are between 170 and 200 gallons. You figure even at $10 a gallon times every cubic yard, 200 or 170 gallons per cubic yard times 540,000 cubic yards, that would go quite a ways. And you would have to pierce the corporate veil to get to Hurwitz, but it can be done. And if the Regional Water Board were to take some action at the request of the Harbor District or other public entities, some of this problem could be solved. And there's information available to make it all happen. The Regional Board has accumulated a huge amount of data. Somebody needs to take this on.
You're right.
Yeah, I think one of the common themes that we're hearing today, and Pat, I gotta agree with you with, the regulations and how frustrating that can be, and Bruce, that just seems so ridiculous. And I think one of the things that we need to do, and this is gonna tie into Larry's point about, we gotta know how to challenge how these regulations, challenge the justification of these regulations. And you gotta be informed, you gotta know, well, why is the apples in Southern California not working with our apples up here? I mean, this is a survival of the bay. The fishermen, everyone, even the kayakers, everyone here in this bay needs a functioning bay. And we gotta know how to challenge and have these justifications real, because a lot of times in my experiences, they're not really real. They're based on staff's opinions rather than actual hard data. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think one of the things is the science is pretty clear, or the lack of it, in the case of the long fin smelt. The problems within the bureaucracy are also, they're recognized. So now the question is, how do we get that unanimity that I didn't realize how lucky we were on the MLPA. That was a process that dealt with other parts of the state completely differently, and it was very advantageous that we were able to control our destiny. We need to do that now again, and I'm open to anybody who wants to rely on this and figure out how we, Bruce is suggesting we need to broaden this somewhat, but the interests of the Bay still have to remain central. But he has a nexus, and so he could join us if we were relating pretty much to the Bay. And, the science is all there. That's what frustrates me. The Harbor District has paid for the eelgrass studies. We know that it doesn't hurt to pump sediment into the ocean. So a lot of the science has been done. And in those areas that it hasn't been done on longfin smelt, the district is committed, just as Coast Seafood is, to adaptive management. If you went out in a boat today, you'd see the cameras they have to take movies of the brand and do the brand, use the eelgrass beds inside there. So we are meeting the standard. If we trust that within our own community and we go forward with science and policy and unanimity in our community, then we will get a quarter.